"Sir, your disability and black skin are making other customers uncomfortable. Please leave immediately." The cold, cutting words of the restaurant manager echoed, piercing straight into the heart of Sergeant Leroy Thompson, a U.S. Navy veteran who sacrificed his right leg in Operation Enduring Freedom. Confined to his wheelchair, he only sought to savor a simple bowl of lobster bisque, a rare treat funded by a modest inheritance. But now, a wave of humiliation surged within him, like an old wound torn open. At a nearby table, 6 burly men silently observed they were active-duty Navy SEALs. And then, the sound of chairs scraping the floor reverberated. In the heart of Washington, D.C., where majestic monuments like the Lincoln Memorial stand tall and imposing, recounting the nation's profound story of sacrifice, Sergeant Leroy Thompson wheeled his manual wheelchair through the bustling streets, carrying a lifetime journey brimming with courage and deep-seated loss. This black man in his 60s, with eyes profoundly deep and gleaming with memories of distant seas, had once been a young sailor in the United States Navy, where he set foot on massive cruiser ships during the Iraq War. Born in the arid countryside of Albany, Georgia, Leroy grew up amid cotton fields and dreams of escaping poverty. Right after graduating high school, he enlisted, not just to seek a future but to serve his country, an ideal he carried in his heart like an unquenchable flame. Those years in the Persian Gulf, during the secret missions of Operation Enduring Freedom, forged him into a resilient warrior, yet they also left scars that would never fully heal. One fateful afternoon in the desert, amid swirling dust and deafening explosions, a brutal ambush robbed Leroy of his right leg below the knee. The chronic pain from that moment became an unwelcome companion, clinging to him day after day. Discharged with the Purple Heart Medal gleaming on his chest, Leroy returned to Arlington, Virginia, living in a modest apartment where the simple walls echoed the tale of a man who had sacrificed so much. His meager Navy pension barely sustained him day to day, but his aging golden retriever named Max, not a service dog, just a loyal friend, became his greatest source of comfort. Every evening, as the sunset cast its glow, Max lay at Leroy's feet, his warm brown eyes seeming to whisper that he was not alone. Today, a rare ray of light flickered in his life. An unexpected small inheritance from a distant uncle in Savannah, someone Leroy had met only a few times, brought the chance for him to do something special. Instead of his usual frugal meals, Leroy decided to treat himself to a deserving experience. Dinner at Silver Fork, the upscale restaurant right in the heart of D.C., where the lobster bisque was hailed as a culinary masterpiece. He carefully selected his worn but clean dress pants, smoothed out his buttoned collar shirt, and donned his faded Navy veteran hat, a small yet sacred symbol of those distant years of service. That hat, with its silver ship emblem, served as a reminder of the days he stood on the deck, facing storms and dangers to protect the American flag. Wheeling his chair through the gleaming glass doors of Silver Fork, Leroy sensed the curious glances from surrounding patrons. The faint clicking of the wheels blended into the luxurious atmosphere of crystal chandeliers and pristine white tablecloths. He was led to a small table near the kitchen entrance, a humble spot, but he did not complain. In his heart, he held only a simple desire: to savor the famous lobster bisque, to relish a moment of dignity he rarely allowed himself. But as he sat there, his gaunt hands holding the spoon, his eyes quietly observing the space, Leroy had no idea that societal prejudice was lurking, ready to turn his modest dream into a nightmare. The scrutinizing gazes from the restaurant manager, hidden behind a fake smile, were silently judging him not as a hero, but as a distraction that did not belong. Could a veteran who once sacrificed for his country find peace here, or was a new challenge awaiting? As soon as Sergeant Leroy Thompson wheeled his chair through the gleaming glass doors of Silver Fork, the restaurant's luxurious space with crystal chandeliers casting sparkling light and tablecloths as pristine white as snow suddenly turned oppressive, as if the air itself were compressed tightly under the manager Whitaker's piercing cold gaze. This middle-aged man, in his perfectly tailored suit and a forced smile rehearsed before a mirror, embodied arrogant authority, a figure proud of preserving the exclusive image for the restaurant catering to the white upper class in central Washington, D.C. In Whitaker's eyes, Leroy was not a U.S. Navy veteran who had sacrificed his right leg in Operation Enduring Freedom, but merely an inconvenience, a silhouette that didn't belong in the world of expensive wine glasses and glittering conversations. Leroy's old wheelchair, emitting faint clicking sounds, the prosthetic leg subtly exposed under his frayed pant cuff, and his dark skin glistening under the restaurant lights, all seemed like invisible challenges to the standards Whitaker worshipped. Leroy, with the composure forged from days facing turbulent waves in the Persian Gulf, sat quietly at the small table near the kitchen entrance, a humble position he accepted without a single complaint. He carefully held the spoon, savoring each mouthful of lobster bisque, its rich flavor like a rare moment of dignity he granted himself after years of meager living. His eyes, profoundly deep and filled with memories, glanced over the surrounding patrons without causing any disturbance, simply hoping to enjoy a peaceful evening. But Whitaker, watching from afar since the moment he entered, furrowed his brows as if Leroy's presence were a stain on the restaurant's perfect picture. In Whitaker's mind, a black man, disabled, dressed in simple clothes, could not blend into the upscale image he had painstakingly built. Every faint click from the wheelchair, every glance from Leroy seemed to ignite discomfort within him, a prejudice veiled under the guise of restaurant policy. Unable to contain it any longer, Whitaker approached, his polished leather shoes echoing in steady rhythms on the wooden floor. He stopped beside Leroy's table, posture rigid, his fake smile unable to hide the contempt in his eyes. With a soft but razor-sharp voice, he declared that Leroy's presence from the wheelchair, the prosthetic, to his skin color was disturbing other patrons, a blatant lie wrapped in the veneer of high-end standards. Leroy looked up, his hands holding the spoon frozen mid-air, his weary eyes flashing a deep spark of profound hurt, as if an old bullet wound from the desert were bleeding anew. The lobster bisque's flavor, just a second ago a source of comfort, now tasted like ashes in his mouth. He wanted to protest, to recount his months on cruiser ships, about the Purple Heart Medal, about the painful nights when Max was his only solace. But he chose silence, his heart weighed down by humiliation, a familiar sensation he had faced in a discriminatory society. With slow effort, Leroy began pushing his wheelchair, preparing to leave to avoid making a scene, each turn of the wheels like a knife slicing into his self-respect. But in that moment, from the restaurant's shadowy corner, a group of burly men with powerful builds and sharp eyes silently observed. They sat at a large table, dressed in expensive yet simple civilian clothes, as if deliberately concealing their latent strength. These men, unrecognized by anyone in Silver Fork, were an active-duty U.S. Navy SEAL team, and they had witnessed the entire blatant discrimination. Their faces gradually darkened, jaws clenched, like warriors ready to step into battle. Would their silence endure, or was a storm of justice about to erupt, transforming this evening into an unforgettable moment? From the shadowy corner of Silver Fork, where the dim chandelier light veiled the powerful silhouettes, a group of 6 burly men in their 32nd and 42nd quietly sat around the large table, savoring a rare dinner like peaceful moments amid a raging storm. They were the active-duty U.S. Navy SEAL team, elite warriors forged through fire and bullets to safeguard the Stars and Stripes flag. Dressed in expensive yet simple civilian clothes, they blended into the crowd of patrons, with no one recognizing the latent power behind their calm gestures. Engaged in grueling urban training exercises at Quantico, Virginia, where drills simulating street warfare pushed them to their limits, this group had chosen Washington, D.C. as a brief stopover, seeking a touch of relaxation amid secret missions in Afghanistan and Syria. Those places, with scorching deserts and chaotic streets, had etched into them the spirit of brotherhood in service, a bond transcending all barriers, where every soldier was like flesh and blood kin, ready to sacrifice for their comrades. From their position, They had witnessed the entire dialogue between Manager Whitaker and Sergeant Leroy Thompson from start to finish, each contemptuous word from Whitaker stabbing like a knife into their loyal hearts. The faces of these men, sculpted by battlefield dust and sleepless nights, gradually darkened, jaws clenched in the face of Whitaker's blatant obstinacy. How could they sit still when a fellow veteran, who had sacrificed his right leg for the American flag in Operation Enduring Freedom, was being expelled from this place solely because of his disability and skin color? Leroy, with his old wheelchair and wounded gaze, represented thousands of silent heroes. They revered those who had paved the way for generations of warriors like them. Emotions surged within each SEAL, a silent fury mixed with profound compassion, as if Leroy's wound were their own. They recalled lost comrades in Kabul or Damascus, where skin color or physical condition had never hindered the spirit of unity. Whitaker, with his impeccable suit and cold voice, became a symbol of the discrimination they had fought to eradicate, a societal prejudice still creeping into the heart of the America they swore to protect. Master Chief Ramirez, the group leader with eyes that had seen far too much loss from midnight raids to comrades' funerals, felt the boiling anger most acutely. He, a seasoned veteran with dozens of medals hidden beneath his civilian attire, made a subtle hand signal, a familiar gesture from those brutal training sessions where every move had to be precise as a clock. It wasn't a command to attack, but a silent call to action, awakening the warrior instinct in every member. In unison, the six stood up, the sound of chairs scraping the wooden floor echoing like thunder in the restaurant's suddenly hushed space, a sharp noise slicing through the oppression. Every gaze from the surrounding patrons, those enjoying their upscale meals, turned toward them, curiosity mingled with anticipation spreading. The combined presence of the SEAL group radiated controlled power and tangible lethality, like a living wall, transforming the atmosphere from tense to a field of commanding authority. They stood there, tall and steadfast, their posture wordlessly telling a story of soldiers ready to confront any peril. Whitaker, turning his back on Leroy in a moment of triumph, suddenly stiffened, whirling around with a face paling under the lights. He, accustomed to controlling everything in the restaurant, now sensed the abrupt shift, as if a cold wind from the battlefield had swept through. The SEAL group said nothing yet, but their eyes, cold and focused, spoke volumes. They were preparing for a historic confrontation where justice was not just words but deeds. How would these warriors speak out? And would that moment change Leroy's fate forever? With a calm voice like the low rumble of a submarine engine gliding through the deep ocean, Master Chief Ramirez stepped forward, his sharp gaze locking straight into Whitaker's panicked eyes, exposing the harsh truth without any superfluous words. That moment, when the 6 U.S. Navy SEAL warriors stood towering like living statues amid the silent space of Silver Fork, marked the shift from silent observation to open action, a symbol of justice that every American yearns to witness. Ramirez, with experience from secret missions in the Persian Gulf and Syria, was not just a commander but the embodiment of the spirit of brotherhood in service, where every insult to a comrade was an unforgivable challenge. He stopped before Whitaker, his sturdy body radiating controlled power, and with a low but resounding voice, he clearly declared the manager's behavior, expelling Sergeant Leroy Thompson, a veteran awarded the Purple Heart Medal, solely because of his wheelchair, prosthetic leg, and race factors that Whitaker deemed uncomfortable. That was not a question, but a razor-sharp declaration, stripping bare the hidden prejudice lurking beneath the veneer of high-end policy, making the restaurant's atmosphere even more suffocating. Whitaker, accustomed to controlling everything in his luxurious world, suddenly stammered, his face paling under the crystal chandelier lights, desperately trying to defend himself with vague words about misunderstandings and restaurant standards. But his fabricated confidence shattered under the weight of the truth when another SEAL, Lieutenant Hayes, a young warrior with muscles honed from training exercises at Quantico, interjected with a calm but commanding voice, emphasizing that Leroy had endured more in a single morning of combat than Whitaker's entire pampered life. Those words, though concise, were like a swift blade, slicing through the layer of discrimination, reminding everyone of the silent sacrifices of soldiers protecting the American flag. The SEAL group, standing shoulder to shoulder, declared they too were deeply uncomfortable with this discriminatory behavior, viewing it as an insult not only to Leroy but to the entire U.S. Armed Forces, those who had shed blood to defend the freedom and equality America prides itself on. Their unity, forged through firefights in Afghanistan and long sleepless nights, transformed that moment into a vivid lesson in integrity, where prejudice had no place. To underscore their stance, the SEAL group reached into their pockets, tossing a thick wad of cash onto the table enough to cover the unfinished meal and a generous tip for the stunned servers, a gesture both elegant and resolute, declaring they would leave because Leroy was not welcome there. That was not just a financial act, but an affirmation that true value lies not in superficial luxury, but in respect for heroes like Leroy. Turning to Leroy, who sat there with a heavy heart and eyes wide in astonishment at the unexpected intervention, Ramirez bent down with a voice now filled with profound warmth and respect, inviting him and his dog Max to join them for dinner at a place in Georgetown, a spot that truly honors veterans, where the food is not only delicious but steeped in gratitude. Leroy, with tears rolling down his cheeks, could only nod, emotions surging like a river breaking through a dam, transforming his initial humiliation into fresh hope. The SEAL group, like an honor guard trained from those grueling exercises, gently grasped the wheelchair handles, picked up the fallen veteran hat, and escorted Leroy out, each of their steps like a vow to protect their comrade, transcending all barriers of race or disability. That moment, as the restaurant door closed behind them, not only ended a confrontation but also opened up a broader wave of consequences, where justice began to spread. But would this departure truly end everything? Or was a storm on social media and public opinion waiting to erupt? When the glass door of Silver Fork closed behind the SEAL group and Sergeant Leroy Thompson, a heavy silence enveloped the restaurant, as if the once proud, luxurious atmosphere Whitaker boasted about had transformed into a tomb of shame, where each crystal chandelier light seemed to dim under the crushing weight of injustice. That departure, with Leroy escorted like a true hero amid the burly warriors, was not just the end of a confrontation but the spark igniting a widespread wave of outrage, reminding every American of the core values of social justice and honoring veterans. Whitaker stood there like a cold stone statue, his authority vanishing in an instant, his pallid face reflecting the collapse of the world he had built on prejudice. The surrounding patrons, initially silent spectators, now began to murmur. Then some stood up to follow, their faces flushed with fury, whispering harsh criticisms about the restaurant's contemptuous treatment of a veteran who had sacrificed for the American flag. They left, abandoning their unfinished meals, like a silent declaration that no one could support a place that trampled on the dignity of heroes like Leroy. Whitaker, in a desperate salvage attempt, tried to stammer apologies, his trembling voice echoing in the hopeless void, but they fell on deaf ears of the dazed staff and remaining customers, who now glared at him with evident disdain. That silence didn't last. Within the first hour, covert videos from patrons' phones began spreading on social media, with scorching titles like Navy SEALs Defend Black Disabled Veteran Ejected from Upscale Restaurant in Washington, D.C., quickly becoming a hot topic on Twitter and Facebook. Those short clips, capturing the moment the SEAL group stood up in unison, the echoing scrape of chairs on the floor, and Ramirez's razor-sharp confrontation, were shared thousands of times, unleashing a storm of public opinion no one anticipated. Netizens, from veterans in Arlington to justice supporters in New York, flooded in with comments, sharing personal stories of discrimination, turning hashtags like #HonorOurVeterans and #SealJustice into national trends. Silver Fork's review pages on platforms like Yelp and Google were inundated with one-star ratings, with scathing comments describing the restaurant as a symbol of obstinacy, where flashy exteriors hid narrow-minded hearts. The chain restaurant's headquarters in New York, usually peaceful with strategic meetings, was now submerged in thousands of angry calls and emails, from veteran organizations to ordinary citizens, demanding accountability. Whitaker, once boastful of high-end standards, was fired immediately by day's end, a decision publicly announced as an effort to extinguish the flames, but it only added fuel to the fire. The company, under public pressure, issued an official apology across all platforms, admitting the discriminatory behavior and committing to a substantial donation to the Wounded Warrior Project, the organization supporting disabled veterans, a gesture many saw as belated but necessary, to honor those like Leroy who had sacrificed in Operation Enduring Freedom. Furthermore, they rolled out mandatory anti-discrimination training across the entire system, from managers to staff, like a promise to change from the roots, reflecting the equality values America always strives for. This viral story not only destroyed Silver Fork's reputation, turning it from a luxury icon into a cautionary tale, but also ignited a national discussion on honoring veterans, especially those of color and with disabilities, in a society still riddled with cracks of prejudice. That event, spreading like a wildfire, touched millions of American hearts, from military families in Virginia to online forums, reminding that justice is not just words but collective action. But Leroy's journey, from initial humiliation to this affirmation, hasn't ended here. Would that evening bring him a truly warm conclusion? Or are there even deeper lessons awaiting? At a cozy steakhouse in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where the gentle golden lights and the aroma of grilling meat wafted like a friendly invitation, Sergeant Leroy Thompson discovered an unexpected conclusion to his journey, transforming the media storm from Silver Fork into a profoundly affirming evening where true solidarity shone brightly among the warriors. Following the widespread wave of outrage across social media and national discourse, Leroy was treated to the best meal of his life, seated amid the embracing arms of brotherhood in service from the U.S. Navy SEAL Group, those burly men with warm eyes and genuine smiles, sharing resounding laughter and stories from missions in Iraq without prying into his painful past. They recounted long nights in the desert, perilous moments where team spirit saved lives, yet always maintained a respectful distance, allowing Leroy to feel the connection without intrusion. Each tender bite of steak, each cool sip of water, felt like a silent tribute, reminding him that his sacrifice in Operation Enduring Freedom was far from futile, but still vibrantly alive in the hearts of the younger generation of warriors. Leroy, with his eyes now sparkling with joy instead of hurt, sat there listening, his dog Max lying peacefully under the table like an eternal symbol of unwavering loyalty, his tail wagging gently whenever a SEAL stroked him. The young soldiers, forged through firefights in Afghanistan and Syria, did not inquire about his right leg wound or chronic pain, but only shared joyful moments and lessons from the battlefield about the power of unity transcending age, race, or disability. They exchanged phone numbers naturally, promising to stay in touch, a small gesture carrying immense significance, turning the evening from initial humiliation into a deep affirmation that Leroy was neither invisible nor forgotten. He was part of a tribe of service, an extended family where every member protected one another, just as they had risen at Silver Fork to defend his honor. That evening reminded Leroy that old wounds, whether from desert ambushes or societal prejudice, could heal through the unexpected solidarity from these youthful warriors, who represented the future of the United States Armed Forces. This story, spreading from an upscale restaurant in D.C. to every corner of America, teaches us that true strength does not lie in flashy appearances or exclusive guest lists, but in integrity and the courage to stand up for what's right, especially for those who have stood up for all of us, like Leroy and millions of other veterans. In a world full of prejudice, where racial and disability discrimination still lingers, the brotherhood in service proves stronger than ever, an invincible force overcoming all barriers, reminding us that America was built on the foundation of equality and shared sacrifice. Sometimes, silent heroes like Leroy find their strongest supporters in the most unexpected places, from a nearby table to a social media storm, turning a moment of humiliation into a symbol of hope. And now, As the story draws to a close, ask yourself, are you ready to stand up for those who have sacrificed for us, just as the SEAL Group did? Subscribe to the channel if you believe every veteran deserves to be honored, and please share this story to spread the message, because who knows, you might just be the one to change someone's life. At a cozy steakhouse in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., where the gentle golden lights and the aroma of grilling meat wafted like a friendly invitation, Sergeant Leroy Thompson discovered an unexpected conclusion to his journey, transforming the media storm from Silver Fork into a profoundly affirming evening, where true solidarity shone brightly among the warriors. Following the widespread wave of outrage across social media and national discourse, Leroy was treated to the best meal of his life, seated amid the embracing arms of brotherhood in service from the U.S. Navy SEAL Group, those burly men, with warm eyes and genuine smiles, sharing resounding laughter and stories from missions in Iraq without prying into his painful past. They recounted long nights in the desert, perilous moments where team spirit saved lives, yet always maintained a respectful distance, allowing Leroy to feel the connection without intrusion. Each tender bite of steak, each cool sip of water, felt like a silent tribute, reminding him that his sacrifice in Operation Enduring Freedom was far from futile, but still vibrantly alive in the hearts of the younger generation of warriors. Leroy, with his eyes now sparkling with joy instead of hurt, sat there listening, his dog Max lying peacefully under the table like an eternal symbol of unwavering loyalty, his tail wagging gently whenever a SEAL stroked him. The young soldiers, forged through firefights in Afghanistan and Syria, did not inquire about his right leg wound or chronic pain, but only shared joyful moments, lessons from the battlefield about the power of unity transcending age, race, or disability. They exchanged phone numbers naturally, promising to stay in touch, a small gesture carrying immense significance, turning the evening from initial humiliation into a deep affirmation that Leroy was neither invisible nor forgotten. He was part of a tribe of service, an extended family where every member protected one another, just as they had risen at Silver Fork to defend his honor. That evening reminded Leroy that old wounds, whether from desert ambushes or societal prejudice, could heal through the unexpected solidarity from these youthful warriors who represented the future of the United States Armed Forces. This story, spreading from an upscale restaurant in D.C. to every corner of America, teaches us that true strength does not lie in flashy appearances or exclusive guest lists, but in integrity and the courage to stand up for what's right, especially for those who have stood up for all of us, like Leroy and millions of other veterans. In a world full of prejudice, where racial and disability discrimination still lingers, the brotherhood in service proves stronger than ever, an invincible force overcoming all barriers, reminding us that America was built on the foundation of equality and shared sacrifice. Sometimes, silent heroes like Leroy find their strongest supporters in the most unexpected places, from a nearby table to a social media storm, turning a moment of humiliation into a symbol of hope. And now, as the story draws to a close, ask yourself, are you ready to stand up for those who have sacrificed for us, just as the SEAL Group did? Subscribe to the channel if you believe every veteran deserves to be honored, and please share this story to spread the message, because who knows, you might just be the one to change someone's life.